Welcome, everyone. There is a short story by H.P. Lovecraft, which is entitled Memory. It is but 1 page long, and it tells of the story of perhaps what will remain of humankind once humankind has disappeared. There is a valley which is called the Valley of Nis, where a cursed moon shines. And it's only the moon that shines. The sun is never mentioned. For what is the moon but the ghostly prolongation of sunlight? And hence, moonlight is a reflection of what was, and however is not in itself a life force as is the light of the sun. It is a mere reflection which does not produce or generate its own light. And in this valley, where, he says, there is evil vines and there are creeping plants, as Lovecraft writes, in hands, there are ruined palaces, ruined memory palaces, one wonders. There are crumbling courtyards. So what remains are the ruins of our greatest buildings. However, they are, of course, also crumbling. Now no longer of any purpose to the human being, but, as Lovecraft says, that there is a grey toad which here uses the stone and it lives beneath the stone as its sort of its safe place, its refuge, its sanctuary. The toad in mythology is often connected to death, but also to rebirth, reincarnation. There is, it's an ambivalent symbolic animal, and it can also be the attribute of the devil, of course. But if we stay with death, then what dwells underneath the great walls of once, these great stones laid for all time, is death and the weird possibility of reincarnation at the same time. However, the question is, of course, from what could the reincarnation come? Could it come from the stone? There is a river, we are told. It's called Than or Tan. And the river's waters are filled with weeds and they are slimy, we are told. Its spring, its origin is unseen. It's hidden, concealed. And it flows red. And now we are told that there is a demon of the valley who doesn't know why the waters are red and where the waters of the river come from, nor where they are bound. There is then also a genie that haunts the moonbeams. And it speaks to the demon of the valley. Of course, the demon itself is not necessarily evil or so, but it's the demon of the valley to say that the demon reigns over this cursed valley of darkness, which is only lit by the ghostly moonlight, this prolongation of the sun, which itself does not have life force, but underneath which there is at once, underneath the stone walls and courtyards of the valley, of the palaces in the valley, there is still a possibility of a reincarnation, a rebirth. Now, what is the demon's name? He says, I am memory. Thus, the demon is memory. That is to say, what haunts or what guards this valley of humankind once it has disappeared, by forgetting itself, which is what the moonlight, this half moonlight, really indicates and articulates, is that there is a forgetting of the life force of the sun. So the human beings who have forgotten themselves, they live on, but in a fading memory of this demon, who is memory itself. But Alcee says that he is also old. And he is asked by the genie who haunts the moonbeams, who built the palaces and who built the courtyards and the columns, etc. And the demon says something striking, namely that the deeds are already forgotten. They are not what remains in memory, are not the deeds of man. Their appearance, however, is close or like, as he remembers, is likely to those of the apes that also inhabit the valley still. But most importantly, he says this. He does remember their name because it rhymes with the river Than or Tan, and that name, of course, is man. So the human being, the name of the human being is remembered by memory itself once human beings have forgotten themselves and their world is crumbling in ghost-like moonlight. With all life force gone, why is it their name here that is remembered? So what lives on after, long after we are gone, is our memory as a daimon, a daimonic force that remains. Our memory becomes a daimonic force that lingers on, but also, of course, grows old and will ultimately disappear. But memory lives on, slowly fading like fog in the valley. In a blurry, dark valley, he dwells, memory, and which is lit only by the half moon. But not our deeds, as mentioned before, remain, but they are, of course, still there. I mean, the buildings are still there, they still stand, but what doesn't remain is any of the great deeds that may have led to them. Those are forgotten. And there is a memory, of course, but a fading one, and a faint memory of our appearance, which is not entirely very exact or precise. For this doesn't matter either. But why is it again that the name is remembered? Human beings, I think, are remembered in their name, because it's our languages, our words, that remain as fading echoes throughout the eons. It is our spoken word, enache en hologos. In the beginning was the Word, and so it will be in the end, that we are still remembered. It is through language that we remember ourselves. And so the darkest forces, of course, work against language and against words. Why does the name of the human being as man rhyme with the river Than, which is red? Red is symbolical, of course, for blood. For the blood, for this hidden river, which springs from almost, it seems, out of nowhere and keeps flowing still. The waters are slimy and filled with weeds, which means there is no longer purity and clarity in the water. Memory is fading in a slimy, dank moss darkness and disappearing and dying off in it. But it is also red, so there is still a connection to the life force that is blood, that is the human blood. Why does the name of the human being rhyme with the river Than, which symbolically stands for the fading life force? I think it's because the rhyme itself, when something rhymes, there is a remembrance in something other, a recurrence in the other of what had come before. Every rhyming verse, every verse that rhymes, remembers at least the tonality and the flow of the language of the word that came before. And so the river is now the slimy, dying, weeded, bloody, and no longer graspable in its origin river that is also slowly disappearing. What will remain until the last are not the deeds of men. And the beginning was not the deed, Dr. Faustus, but in the beginning and in the end is the word. That is our human memory. Thank you very much for listening.